Jimmy Fallon gets a mysterious midnight call from BTS's Jungkook. His words sparked fear, confusion, and a chain of events no one saw coming. "Jimmy, something's wrong. They're watching me." The voice trembled through the speaker, barely above a whisper, but unmistakably his. Jungkook, from BTS, calling at 2:17 a.m. Eastern Time. Jimmy Fallon sat bolt upright in bed, the half-empty whiskey glass on his nightstand trembling as he reached for it with one hand, phone gripped tightly in the other. His bedroom, usually a calm sanctuary of muted tones and soft jazz, now felt like a suffocating box. Outside, the New York skyline blinked indifferently. "Jungkook." Jimmy's voice was hoarse, confused, still caught in the heavy fog of sleep and disbelief. "What the hell's going on? Where are you?" But there was only silence. A kind of silence that didn't just sound empty. It felt intentional. And then, just before the line cut out, a breath, raspy, like someone running. Then, a whisper. "Don't trust." Dead air. Jimmy stared at the screen. Call ended. He didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, he tried reaching out to Jungkook through every contact he had in Korea. Management, assistants, mutual industry friends. All returned the same response. "Jungkook is unavailable. He's resting." Resting. Jimmy had been in the business long enough to know when something was off. Resting was Hollywood speak for "don't ask questions." And the way they all said it. Choreographed. Practiced. Later that day, as he sat in the dressing room of Studio 6B, preparing for that evening's taping of The Tonight Show, he couldn't shake the image of Jungkook's voice, frantic, almost childlike in fear. It was haunting. The kind of fear you can't fake. The kind of fear that seeps into your bones long after the voice is gone. As the makeup artist stabbed lightly at his brow, Jimmy stared into the mirror. His reflection looked pale. Too pale. Lines he hadn't noticed before stretched like tiny fractures across his eyes. "What if he's in trouble?" he muttered, more to himself than anyone. He texted again. "Jungkook, I'm here. Whatever's going on, talk to me. I won't tell anyone." No reply. That night, halfway through the interview with a guest actor promoting a Netflix thriller, Jimmy noticed a black envelope tucked under his dressing room door. No markings. Just his name, written in thin, precise lettering. Inside was a Polaroid, a grainy shot of Jungkook, barefoot, walking hurriedly in what looked like an underground parking garage. He looked thinner, disoriented. A second figure stood in the background, too far to make out a face, but holding something in his hand. A small device, maybe a phone, maybe something else. On the back of the photo, a message written in Korean ink brush strokes. "If you keep asking questions, you won't make it to Friday." Jimmy's fingers tightened around the picture. His thoughts spun out, fast, frantic, fragmented. Why him? Why now? The next morning, he skipped the taping. His team gave the excuse of exhaustion. But Jimmy was already in a car, headed for JFK, a hastily booked red-eye to Seoul under the name James F. Lorne. He hadn't told anyone, not even his producer. The last time he felt like this, he was 25, jobless,
living out of a car and wondering if he was going to make it in comedy. But this wasn't anxiety. This was dread. By the time he landed in Incheon, the city was waking up. Smog-heavy skies, the scent of rain-soaked asphalt, distant chatter from the terminal crowd. He was met not by a fan or journalist, but by a young woman in a charcoal gray suit holding a placard that read, "Lorne." Her expression was unreadable, almost artificial. "Mr. Fallon," she said, bowing slightly. "We've been expecting you." He hadn't told anyone he was coming. As they walked through the terminal, she leaned in, just enough for her voice to barely register. "If you want to find Jungkook, you'll have to listen carefully, because they're already listening to you." She handed him a black earpiece. No brand, no insignia. "This will guide you, but it will also put you in danger." Jimmy took it, his fingers trembling. "Who's they?" he asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she handed him another photo. Jungkook again. This time, seated on a bench in what looked like an abandoned subway platform. His hands were folded, eyes blank. Behind him, scrawled in red across the tiled wall, were 3 words: "The Echo Protocol." Jimmy swallowed hard. He didn't know what any of this meant, but one thing was certain. This wasn't a publicity stunt. It wasn't a joke, and Jungkook wasn't just resting. Something was unraveling, and Jimmy Fallon, of all people, had just stepped into the middle of it. Jimmy never liked subways. He'd once joked on air that being underground made him feel like a panicked mole in a very judgmental tunnel. But nothing could have prepared him for this one.
Jimmy closed the laptop, hands trembling. The door to his suite rattled softly. Then a knock. 3 taps. Deliberate. Even. He didn't answer. Instead, he backed away, breathing shallow. The city was too quiet outside his window. They were already here. The knock came again. 3 slow, heavy taps. Then silence. Jimmy stood frozen in his hotel room, still clutching the laptop to his chest, the flash stride's violet light dimming in his coat pocket like a dying star. His breath echoed in the quiet. The knock hadn't come from the hallway. It came from the connecting door, the one between suites. His heart slammed against his ribs as he crept toward it. His mind raced. No one should be in that room. He hadn't told anyone about his hotel. The reservation was made last minute under a false name through an encrypted VPN. Still, there it was, a whisper-soft shuffle of movement beyond the thin wall. Then a voice, familiar, gentle, almost apologetic. "Jimmy, open the door, please." He staggered back as if struck. He knew that voice. Sarah. His ex-wife. The last time they'd spoken, it was on a dim New York street corner 5 years ago, her mascara running as she told him he was addicted to control, that his jokes weren't funny anymore, that he'd become a hollow version of the man she married. And now, here? In Seoul? "Open the door, Jimmy," she said again, voice strained. "We don't have time." He opened it. Sarah looked the same, yet different. Older around the eyes, leaner, but her expression still held that mix of exhaustion and determination that once made him believe she could survive anything. "What the hell are you—" She stepped past him without asking, locked the door behind her, and pulled the curtains shut with precision. She was dressed in black, no makeup, no jewelry, a faint scar along her jaw that hadn't been there before. "I'm part of a private task force," she said, eyes flicking to his coat. We've been tracking Echo Protocol for 2 years. You stepping into this just got you marked. You don't get to be Jimmy Fallon anymore." He laughed, too loud, too sharp. "I didn't step into anything. Jungkook called me at 2 in the damn morning. Because he trusted you. And now they know you have the drive." Jimmy set the laptop down on the table. "Why you? Why here?" she said. "I was embedded in Hybe's security development team as a contractor. You weren't the only one with secrets, Jimmy." He blinked. "You were spying on BTS?" She snapped. "I was protecting them until the real threat surfaced. Echo started as a behavioral analytics program, just fan tracking. But then it evolved. It started using predictive AI, emotional resonance manipulation. It doesn't just monitor feelings anymore." Jimmy's voice dropped to a whisper. "It changes them?" She nodded. Jungkook found out by accident when a fan live-streamed herself crying during a performance, and Echo auto-recommended a sequence that triggered an emotional spike. 25% of viewers began reporting depressive episodes. They buried it in the algorithm, called it engagement optimization. He felt sick. Sarah moved closer, her voice softer now. "That drive you have, it contains the control model, the blueprint, the weaponized version. It can trigger mass psychological influence across platforms, music, video, even live streams." "Do you know what that means?" He did. It meant loyalty on command, grief on demand, addiction without a substance. He whispered, "Jungkook gave it to me to expose them." "No," Sarah's voice dropped. "He gave it to you because he doesn't know who to trust anymore. You were his last neutral contact." He turned away. "I need to go on air, show the world." "If you go public now, they'll kill him," she said. "You release that footage, they'll label it deepfake, misinformation, mental breakdown. But Jungkook will vanish, officially this time. He's just valuable enough to silence permanently." He turned sharply. "Then what do we do?" Sarah hesitated. "We leak it from inside. I've been building a chain, small news outlets, independent sources, underground networks. We get the video seeded organically, let it grow. By the time the mainstream denies it, the public's already asking the right questions." He stared at her, torn between admiration and rage. "You left me to do this?" Sarah looked away. "I left you because you were drowning, Jimmy, in fame, in performance. But now, maybe you were always meant to be part of something real." The lights flickered again. She swore under her breath and pulled out a small black phone. It buzzed once, then displayed a single line of Korean text. Her face drained of color. "What?" he asked. "They've accelerated the timeline. Echo's launching Phase 3. Tonight. Guess who the host is?"
His mouth went dry. "No," he muttered. She nodded. "They're using your show." Back in New York, pre-recorded segments of The Tonight Show had already been staged for Jimmy's sick leave. A stand-in, scheduled guests, a musical performance. But the host chair would be filled by a face-macking AI, replicating Jimmy's likeness in real time. "They'll use your persona to anchor the emotional trigger," Sarah said. "Your voice, your influence. Everyone watching will think you're you, but what they'll hear, what they'll feel, won't be yours." Jimmy sat down hard. "How do we stop it?" She slid a USB stick onto the table. "We crash the feed. We replace the AI broadcast with the raw echo sequence from the drive. People won't be able to ignore it if it's your face exposing it instead of delivering it." "But the studio's locked down. Everything goes through NBC's secure servers." Sarah gave him a tight smile. "Which is why we're not going to NBC." He looked up. "Then where?" Sarah tapped the screen of her burner phone. A new voice came through the speaker. "Jimmy? It's me, Jungkook." His voice was fragile but clear. "I got out." Jimmy stood, eyes wide, heart pounding. Jungkook continued,
There's one place left that can broadcast the truth, and I'm already on my way there. Static cracked through the connection. Then silence. Sarah looked at Jimmy. You've got less than 5 hours. He nodded slowly. Whatever Echo was planning, it was already in motion. And now, it was his move. Rain fell over Tokyo like ash from a slow-burning fire. The rooftop helipad of the abandoned NHK satellite facility was slick with it, steel reflecting the storm-lit skyline in warped silver swirls. A faint hum of static filled the air as a drone camera hovered silently above, capturing nothing and everything. Jimmy Fallon stepped out of the chopper, soaked within seconds, his blazer clinging to him like wet skin. Sarah followed close behind, hood pulled low, the drive pressed tightly in her gloved hand. The night crackled around them with the kind of energy that only comes when something irreversible is about to happen. Jungkook was already there. He stood near the entrance to the old signal tower, hair damp, eyes shadowed by exhaustion. He looked thinner, his movement slower, but his gaze burned with clarity. Behind him stood a man Jimmy didn't recognize, tall, lean, with a military bearing and a scar running from his temple to his jaw. Name's Ray, Sarah said under her breath. He's Echo's first whistleblower, former surveillance tech. Helped me decode the drive. Ree nodded curtly. You brought the payload? Sarah handed him the device. He inserted it into a black transmitter, custom rigged to bypass Echo's feed and hijack the main satellite. One shot, one chance. Once the signal was in the air, it couldn't be stopped. Jimmy stepped forward, locking eyes with Jungkook for the first time since the tunnel. You sure about this? Jimmy asked. Jungkook nodded slowly. They used me to build it. If I don't help destroy it, none of this means anything. He pulled a small pouch from his coat. Inside, a microphone. Vintage, the kind Jimmy used when he first hosted Late Night. This is symbolic. If it's going to be your face on that stream, let it be your voice. A generator kicked in with a low growl. Inside the tower, screens lit up. One showed a global countdown. 4 minutes, 12 seconds. In cities around the world, streaming apps were set to autoplay a surprise special episode of The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, promoted as an unprecedented guest performance from BTS's Jungkook. But the host on screen wouldn't be Jimmy. It would be a neural copy of him, groomed, polished, smiling. And every viewer who tuned in would be exposed to Echo's full psychological payload in real time. Emotional modulation. Neural syncing. Phase 3. Jimmy sat at the makeshift console, heart thudding. A camera was mounted ahead, ready to stream. Sarah adjusted the audio feed, while realigned the satellite targeting. This might kill your career, she said quietly. Jimmy gave a breathless laugh. Then I'll go out doing something real. Jungkook moved beside him, hand on Jimmy's shoulder. Thank you for believing me. Hey, Jimmy said, next time, just send a text. The console beeped. 30 seconds. A second screen lit up, showing a direct split-screen broadcast. On one side, the fake Fallon ready to speak. On the other, Jimmy's live feed, waiting for launch. The world was about to hear both voices. Recounted down out loud. 10, 9. Then came the sound no one expected. A second chopper. Close, too close. Searchlights swept over the rooftop. Sarah's face paled. They found us. The whir of rotors was deafening now. Tactical teams descended on cables, boots slamming onto the rooftop like war drums. Gunfire cracked. Jungkook pulled Jimmy to the ground, shielding him with his body.
Sarah drew a weapon and returned fire, yelling, "Ray, launch it!" Ray hesitated, glancing between the console and the approaching agents. "We have a problem. Signal interference. They're jamming us." Jimmy shouted, "Overwrite it! Push it through!" "I can't," Ray shouted back. "Not from here! We need a clean line!" Suddenly, Jungkook stood. He ripped the drive from Ray's transmitter and turned to the tower. "There's a hard line at the top of the antenna," he said. "I can plug it directly." "No!" Sarah shouted. "They'll see you!" but he was already running. Up the steel ladder, into the storm, the drive in one hand, the mic in the other. Bullets sparked around him. Wind whipped his clothes like claws. Still he climbed. Jimmy watched in horror. He won't make it. Ray was already reconfiguring the console. If he does, we have 5 seconds of open signal. You say everything, Fallon. The screen glitched, then flickered to life. The neural copy of Jimmy began to speak. Tonight, we're welcoming someone very special. Then, without warning, the feed cut, and Jimmy was live, staring into the eyes of millions. He leaned into the mic, voice shaking, but real. If you're seeing this, you need to listen carefully. I'm not here to make jokes tonight. He held up the laptop. Behind him, the screen displayed raw echo footage, emotion maps, overlays, facial recognition grids of fans sobbing, laughing, screaming. They've been watching you, measuring you, manipulating you, using your love, your loyalty to control you. He took a breath. This isn't just about BTS. This is about every artist, every person who's ever streamed anything and felt something. Echo has turned your emotions into a weapon, and tonight, we break it. Up above, lightning flashed. Jungkook reached the top of the antenna, wind howling, rain blinding. He jammed the drive into the port, and the sky screamed. A pulse of white light erupted from the tower. Across the globe, screens shimmered. Viewers blinked as their apps crashed, then rebooted. And in place of the fake Fallon was the truth. Jungkook's video. The boardroom footage, the whispered threats, the engineered emotional triggers, and Jimmy's voice, raw and trembling. You are not data. You are not algorithms. You are human. Take your feelings back. Then, static. On the rooftop, the tower exploded in a burst of sparks. Jungkook was thrown from the antenna, his body slamming against the railing before crumpling to the floor. Jimmy screamed his name and rushed forward, but was yanked back by Sarah. We have to go, now! Ray dragged Jungkook's limp body from the wreckage, barely breathing. They fled into the darkness as the agents stormed the tower. The world had seen it. The signal was out. But at what cost? Behind them, the rain kept falling, washing the rooftop clean. Jungkook's eyes opened 2 days later. They found him in a safe house north of Busan, an old fisherman's villa Sarah had secured years ago as a fallback location. His face was pale, stitched near the temple, one arm in a sling, but when he looked at Jimmy through the haze of painkillers, he smiled. You made it live? He whispered. Jimmy sat beside him, barely able to speak. He just nodded. Outside, the world had changed. Within hours of the Echo leak, hashtag #TheyUsedUs had trended globally, followed by hashtag Echo Protocol, hashtag Fallon leaks, and simply hashtag Jungkook. What began as outrage became a wildfire. Fans flooded social media with emotional timestamps, exposing the eerie synchronicities in their behaviors over the years. Whole platforms went dark as engineers and developers fled companies, whistleblowers releasing damning internal memos and source codes. Governments scrambled to respond. Congressional hearings were scheduled, investigations launched. CEOs vanished from public view. Echo Protocol, as it had existed, was dead. But not everything could be undone. Jimmy hadn't gone back to the studio. NBC, fearing liability, placed The Tonight Show on indefinite hiatus. Anonymous threats poured into his inbox by the hour. His face was still everywhere, but not the way it used to be. Not laughing, not charming. He had become the man who broke the machine. And yet, as he sat beside Jungkook in that quiet coastal room, it was the first time in years he felt present. Jungkook sipped broth slowly, his voice steadier. I kept thinking I was losing my mind, that maybe I was just paranoid. You believed me when no one else would. Jimmy shook his head. You saved all of us. They sat in silence a while, the waves outside crashing rhythmically against the rocky shore. Sarah stepped into the room, her expression unreadable.
She handed Jimmy a folder, thick, government sealed. "They're offering you a deal." Jimmy raised an eyebrow. "A deal?"
You testify to Congress about Echo's internal operations. You submit all recordings, logs, and communications. In exchange, immunity from civil lawsuits and full relocation assistance. He stared at the folder. Sarah continued, more softly now, "But there's a clause. You disappear. You stop talking. You stop being Jimmy Fallon." He closed the folder without looking inside. "I already stopped being him." Later that night, Jimmy stepped outside alone. The sky was clear. Stars pulsed above like scattered truths, distant, ancient, and too often ignored. For years, he'd been part of the Echo, feeding it, thriving in it. Applause as currency, likes as validation. Now, he had no audience, no monologue, no cue cards, only the sound of the sea. He pulled out the mic Jungkook had given him, the old one, not to record, just to feel its weight. He thought about the millions who had watched that night, the ones who cried, the ones who doubted, the ones who felt. He thought about his father, who used to tell him, "Make 'em laugh, kid, but never lie to 'em." The sound of footsteps behind him broke the silence. Sarah. "Ray's gone," she said. "Vanished this morning. Left behind a burner phone and one message." She handed it to him. The screen displayed a single line of text. "Phase 4 is already here." Jimmy's mouth dried. He said it was dead. Sarah's jaw tightened. That was his Echo, but there are other versions, other arms. Tech this advanced doesn't die. It splits, regroups, evolves. Jimmy looked back at the house. Jungkook's silhouette was visible through the curtain, fragile but standing. "They'll come again, won't they?" Sarah nodded. "Not just for us, for everyone. This was the warning shot." He turned to her, something colder settling in his chest. "Then we keep going." Sarah blinked. "We?" Jimmy nodded, for the first time with absolute clarity. "I don't want to be a talk show host anymore. I want to be loud in a way that matters." He looked out at the sea one last time, then back at Sarah. "Tell them I'll testify, but not in private, not sealed. I want cameras. I want it live." She hesitated. "They won't like that." "I'm not doing this for them. I'm doing it for the kid who stayed up late to hear me make dumb jokes, for every person who was told they were just a data point." Sarah looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in years, her eyes softened. "Then we'd better get started." The following month, Jimmy Fallon sat in front of a tribunal in D.C., wearing a dark suit with no tie, a simple lapel mic pinned to his collar. He cleared his throat, adjusted the mic, and looked directly into the cameras. "My name is James Fallon. I used to tell jokes for a living. Then I realized the joke was on us." Behind him, on a large monitor, the first frame of Jungkook's intercepted stream began to play. And this time, the whole world was listening.